Anthony Quinn breaking his silence on Charles Bronson feels less like a casual reflection and more like a final confession from a man who understood exactly how brutal Hollywood could be when you came from nothing. Quinn wasn't born into comfort or privilege. He entered the world on April 21, 1915, in Chihuahua, Mexico, as Manuel Antonio Rulo Quinn Oaxaca, into a life defined by instability, poverty, and constant struggle. His parents carried mixed heritage and heavy burdens, and when the family relocated to Los Angeles, they didn't arrive chasing dreams. They arrived trying to survive. Hunger, insecurity, and uncertainty weren't obstacles to Quinn. They were the background noise of his childhood, shaping his instincts long before a camera ever found his face. As a teenager, Quinn worked relentlessly, doing anything that could bring money into the household. He boxed, worked construction, and took on exhausting manual labor that hardened his body and sharpened his resilience. Those early years left marks that never faded. When Quinn eventually appeared on screen, audiences sensed something different. His presence wasn't polished or manufactured. It carried weight, as if every gesture came from lived experience rather than rehearsal. Hollywood didn't give him room to shine at first. Instead, it boxed him into narrow ethnic stereotypes, roles that reflected the industry's limitations rather than his ability. But Quinn endured, quietly sharpening his craft, refusing to let typecasting define his future. A turning point arrived when Quinn discovered art and architecture, a world that opened his mind beyond survival. Studying under Frank Lloyd Wright didn't just expose him to creative discipline. It validated his intelligence and emotional depth. Wright saw something rare in Quinn, an expressive force that couldn't be ignored, and encouraged him toward acting with purpose. That push changed everything. Quinn entered the industry in the 1930s with fire and patience, knowing he would need both. 4 years he waited. Then, in the early 1950s, everything shifted. His role in Viva Zapata in 1952 exploded onto the screen, earning him an Academy Award and breaking a barrier no Mexican-born actor had crossed before. 4 years later, his haunting performance in Lust for Life secured a second Oscar, proving his success wasn't luck. It was inevitability. By the time Zorba the Greek arrived in 1964, Quinn had reached icon status. His portrayal of Alexis Zorba wasn't acting in the traditional sense. It felt like a release of spirit. Loud, joyful, reckless, and deeply human, Zorba embodied a philosophy of survival that mirrored Quinn's own life. The role connected with audiences worldwide because it wasn't just entertaining. It was liberating. Zorba wasn't a character people watched. He was someone they felt, someone who reminded them that life could still be embraced despite pain and loss. That performance sealed Quinn's legacy in a way no award ever could. Over the decades, Quinn amassed more than 150 film credits, moving effortlessly between genres, cultures, and languages. He portrayed biblical figures, revolutionaries, warriors, and outcasts, always injecting humanity where stereotypes could have taken over. What separated Quinn from others was his balance of strength and vulnerability. He could dominate a scene with presence alone, then unravel emotionally moments later. Off-screen, his creative drive extended beyond acting. He painted, sculpted, and wrote, filling galleries with bold emotional work that reflected the same restlessness seen in his films. Creativity wasn't a career choice for Quinn. It was survival. His personal life, however, carried the same intensity and chaos as his performances. In 1937, Quinn married Catherine DeMille, daughter of Cecil B. DeMille, a union that brought stability and opportunity. The marriage opened doors but also placed pressure on a man who already wrestled with identity and impulse. Together, they built a family and a public image of strength, but behind closed doors, cracks formed. Quinn's fame grew, and so did his restlessness. He later admitted to repeated infidelity, acknowledging the pain he caused without excusing it. After nearly 3 decades, the marriage collapsed, ending in divorce in 1965. Quinn remarried quickly, finding passion and reinvention with Italian costume designer Yolanda Adalori. Their life together stretched across continents, filled with children, creativity, and ambition. But old patterns resurfaced. Affairs, secrets, and divided loyalties slowly eroded trust. By the 1990s, the marriage unraveled publicly and painfully, ending in a bitter divorce that exposed decades of unresolved wounds. Even later in life, Quinn sought companionship, eventually marrying Catherine Benvin and embracing fatherhood once again with intensity and pride. Through it all, one name lingered quietly in the background: Charles Bronson. The two men were often compared, cast as symbols of rugged masculinity and silent toughness. But Quinn's late-life reflections stripped away the myth. He described Bronson not as cold or one-dimensional, but as deeply guarded. A man shaped by hardship who learned early that vulnerability could be dangerous. Quinn saw Bronson as a kindred spirit, someone whose silence carried meaning, whose stillness commanded attention. Where Quinn thrived in chaos, Bronson preferred distance. That wasn't arrogance, Quinn said. It was survival. Quinn defended Bronson against critics who dismissed him as simplistic, arguing that restraint takes intelligence, that silence can be more powerful than speeches. Bronson's intensity wasn't manufactured. It was earned. To Quinn, Bronson represented the working-class survivor, a man who absorbed blows and kept standing. That authenticity resonated because it was real. Quinn wasn't mythologizing his peer. He was humanizing him, reminding audiences that behind every hardened image was a man protecting something fragile. In his final years, Quinn retreated from Hollywood's noise to the quiet of Bristol, Rhode Island. There, surrounded by water and silence, he found peace. On June 3, 2001, Anthony Quinn passed away at the age of 86 due to complications from lung cancer. The news echoed across the world, marking the end of a life that crossed borders, cultures, and generations. His funeral was held at the First Baptist Church in America, a fitting setting for a man whose life felt historic in scope. In a final gesture that stunned many, Quinn's wife requested that he be buried not in a cemetery, but in his own backyard beneath an old maple tree overlooking the bay. The town approved. It was a quiet ending for a man who lived loudly, fiercely, and without apology. Anthony Quinn didn't just leave behind films. He left behind a legacy of struggle, reinvention, and truth. And through his words about Charles Bronson, he reminded the world that Hollywood legends aren't built from perfection, but from survival. If you love uncovering the hidden stories behind classic Hollywood legends, subscribe to Classic Hollywood Feuds.